Welcome back, and apologies for keeping you waiting, but these are exceptional times that we are in today. So we are immensely grateful to our two keynote speakers for being able to come here today. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome onto the stage Federica Mogherini, who is head of the European Defence Agency, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, and Vice President of the European Commission. Thank you so much for being with us, Madam High Representative, and please come and make yourself comfortable just for a moment. And also to welcome and thank you, sir, for your patience in these circumstances, Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO. Thank you so much. Please do come and join us on the stage. And while you are doing that, let me just encapsulate in 1 minute what we have talked about so far. We talked about in our first session what's next in terms of defense capability, and against the stark backdrop of those tragic events in Paris, multiplying security threats, we heard there is huge potential for cooperation, and there is political will, as demonstrated at EU summits and NATO summits. But the key question of how to translate that into action still remains to be answered. Too slow, too little, baby steps were the words that were used. And while everyone agreed that defense cooperation is absolutely crucial part of the answer, there was also a call for the EU national governments to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to defense spending, because people said we are at the limits of what we can do. We cannot do more with less anymore. So that is where we are so far. Thank you so much for being here. And Federica Mogherini, could I invite you to the stage to deliver your special address? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to apologize, first of all, with my friend, Jens, and with all of you for this delay, but I think I know I can count on your understanding. It's difficult moments, difficult hours, difficult days. As you said, we have, well, first of all, I had the Foreign Ministers' Council, but then you know very well, we have potentials in the treaties that have not been used yet, but we might use soon. I was just referring to that to my friend Jens. NATO has Article 5. We have other articles, 42, 44, of the treaty that might be required to be activated in the coming days. I will not speculate on that and try to focus on the issue of our meeting tonight. As we meet in one of the most dramatic moments for the European Union, one of the darkest moments we've ever lived. What happened last Friday in Paris will stay for sure as a scar on our European skin and memory. The terrorists have targeted again the very heart of Europe, and just a few hours before, the heart of the Arab world, in Beirut, a Russian plane over Egypt, Turkey's elections, electoral campaigns. We are all very much together in this, in our region, but for sure there was in these last days a clear target to Europe, to the European values, to the European way of life, to one of the main European capitals, as it was before with London or Madrid or Copenhagen. Terrorists targeted our daily life, our nights out, our moments of relax, our freedom. They targeted a symbolic place and a symbolic moment somehow, even if it seems light to mention this, but still, this is also European culture. And said by an Italian, you can believe it. They targeted a football game with great symbolic power, with France against Germany and Germany against France, in the image of a reconciled Europe. We know what they are trying to do. They want us to look at each other with suspect. They want us to be afraid of those with a different color or who speak with a different accent. They play on our fears to tear our societies apart. But our societies will not be destroyed by the other in our societies. They might be destroyed by our fear of the other in our societies. This is something we have to stay vigilant about. I know I'm here to talk about our common European security and defense. But what happened in Paris is obviously a matter of security. The threat posed by terrorists of all kinds is a matter of security and defense. And all of you in the defense community will agree with me when I say there is one mistake we must not make, one mistake we cannot afford today. We must not and cannot act without a rational strategy, a vision on what we want to achieve and how we want to get there. Think of the threat posed by Daesh. It is, of course, a military threat, and a number of European countries, relevant ones, are strongly engaged on this dimension, and also the European Union is part of the coalition against Daesh. But what we truly need today is a pacified Syria. We discussed this today with the ministers and with Staffan de Mistura, and only a negotiated political transition can end the war in Syria. In these days, after the attacks in Paris, I believe the Vienna process is even more important than it used to be. And it is moving forward. The attacks in Paris, in Beirut, in Egypt, in Turkey, and elsewhere all point in the same direction. They want to divide us. They want to weaken our resolve to move beyond our differences. And most probably, they also want us to give up our work for a political, diplomatic solution to the war in Syria. A solution that would provide the best conditions to effectively fight and to defeat Daesh. Making Vienna and the Vienna process work is the best answer we can give to terror. It's not the only one. There are others as well, including military ones, for many of us, for many of the European Union member states, but it's not the only one. That's why I'm proud the European Union has worked day and night in these months to bring all the actors around the table in the region and elsewhere, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, US and Russia, with a strong role for the UN. The threats we face are more complex than ever, and in Syria and Iraq, Daesh has engaged in a very traditional, somehow, kind of war, conquering cities, infrastructures, natural resources, but at the same time, they engage in asymmetric warfare beyond the borders of Syria and Iraq and target our youth with their propaganda on the social media. We have worked so much together with NATO on the hybrid warfare. Now probably we will need to focus that also on other scenarios. But every threat today is hybrid. And this can be obviously scary. But on the other side, there is one world power which has the tools to face complex threat. Well, that is the European Union. Of course, we have gaps to fill, and I will come to that. But let me focus on what makes us strong. Our partners worldwide increasingly see us not just as a big free trade area, which is also not bad, but as a global security provider. And we can be, and we are already, a unique security provider for many. No other world power can mobilize the same variety of foreign policy instruments, diplomatic, in the development field, cooperation tools, and indeed military ones. I don't think Europe can only rely on its soft power. The real challenge is to make full use of all our assets, the hard power and the soft power together, in the most effective and coherent way. This is what the new European global strategy will also be about. For many years, I know the defense community has been a strong advocate of a new strategy for the European Union, and you were right. So I do not need to convince you of why this is an important project we're working out. We know what our interests and values are. In some cases, we need to let our common European interests to emerge in a political, a public debate, and then we need to better define how to achieve them. The key principles that should guide our action, what tools we need, what capabilities. The fact that such strategy will be global in geographical and thematic scope does not mean it will be less security focused. On the contrary, security and defense will be an integral part of each and every chapter. For each objective, we will identify the defense-related instruments we need. The value of our work on what we traditionally define as security and defense will be enhanced and not diluted by being addressed together with other instruments. Complementarity here is the key. I think we have all moved beyond the old-fashioned cultural dispute between defense and development. The same holds true for what is civilian versus what is military. The reality here is one of multipurpose. We tend to focus too much on dividing lines and get stuck into artificial divisions that no longer correspond to reality. Within industry, I know that lesson is learned. We also need to do this at the European Union level. I know many of you believe we will need something more specific and defense-targeted than a global strategy. Let me tell you where I stand on this. When I was first elected in the Italian Parliament, I was in the Defense Committee. And back then, it was 2008, I insisted on the need to provide Italy with a white book on defense. It took us years, but as far as I know, the white book has been published just a few months ago. This is my background, this is where I come from, and I have not changed. When the global strategy will be ready, it will have to be implemented through more sectorial papers, and a specific reflection on Europe's defense will soon be on the agenda. But right now, I think we should focus on the current work that needs to be global, broader than purely defense and security related. Also because there are many different aspects of our security, as actually the recent attacks have shown very well. As you know, we do not imagine the strategy as a document drafted behind closed doors. As we discuss the future of Europe's foreign policy, we can only seek for the broadest cooperation from all, starting from the defense community. The EU military staff has been widely consulted. It will continue to be the case, and I'm really thankful for their contributions. Let me share with you some of the principles that are emerging through this process. The first one relates to the way we engage with our environment. In these very days, European policymakers are exposed somehow to opposite pressures. On the one hand, we are asked to shut the door of our continent, to seek isolation from the rest of the world. And the events in Paris, again, are a tragic reminder that isolation is not an option for us. The traditional boundaries between internal and external policies no longer hold. Turning inwards, for us, will only make Europe more vulnerable, not more protected, and our citizens more vulnerable, not more protected. Or look at it from a different angle. Closure also means that we will miss out on the opportunities that our global links offer, be it in terms of trade, human mobility, or technology. A more connected world offers us, the Europeans, unprecedented opportunities we need to nourish and take. But on the opposite side of the debate, some voices are calling for a more aggressive foreign policy, as if our action alone could solve all the world's problems. Recent history should teach us, yes, we must engage with our neighborhood, and we can do it, but we must also do it responsibly, taking all factors into account, with a rational approach and with a rational strategy. The military interventions can never be the only part of the solution. Still, the military are and remain a crucial part of our overall toolbox. It is a difficult balance to find. It calls for a sense of our limits, but also for a deep reflection on our potential. A big part of the answer involves our relationship with our partners, I believe. In a world where power is more fractured, global security can only be achieved through a collective effort. We have a strong interest in pushing forward our common work with NATO, first of all, and I would like to thank Jens for the excellent cooperation we have developed over this first common year in office, whether it is on political dialogue, on capability development, on addressing new threats, or on very practical cooperation in theaters where we are both engaged. And we also have a strong interest in developing new kinds of cooperation with other regional organizations. Think of the African Union, for instance, which can take responsibility for the security of their own continent. In the field of CSDP, Partnerships are one of the most effective and dynamic areas. And I know this goes the same for NATO. More and more countries reach out to us and want to engage in a dialogue and, better still, to cooperate, to contribute to our missions and operations worldwide. And this is something we should encourage more and more. In our recent past, the ambition to lonely take charge of our neighborhood backfired. Today we can build up new alliances to address the common challenges we face. Partnerships in which everybody follows their own interest to the benefit of all. Someone thinks that win-win situations are somehow naive, but I believe in the world of today they are the only sustainable way forward. And indeed possible, where I think we have shown it in recent times. So living up to these principles call for adequate tools, and here I come to the meat, as I would say, including the development of military capabilities and defense spending. Now, today I'm not here to tell you that we must do more with less, and that was written in my speech before you told me. I'm not a big fan of this expression at all. Yes, we must spend better, for sure, but we also must spend enough in order to have this better spending effective. In June 2015, the heads of state and government called for a sufficient level of expenditure for defense and a more efficient way of using these resources. While budgets in some member states are on the increase, such increases do not compensate for the decline in the recent years. Let me take one concrete example. Investments in defense research has reduced in real terms by almost 1/3, minus 29% over the last few years. Research is crucial for the capabilities of the future. You all know that, I know it. So whilst immediate savings might be accrued by cutting back now, this will cost us in the long term by not having the right capabilities when we will need them. More efficient use of the defense expenditure is precisely why the European Defense Agency plays such a crucial role. Its mission is to help reduce the long-standing fragmentation of Europe's defense sector and to deepen European defense cooperation. It allows member states to acquire together what is out of reach individually. Crucially, the European Defence Agency is also working closely with the European Commission and member states, both to exploit dual-use technologies and support the preparatory action on CSDP-related research. The preparatory action will be a game changer. It will be the first time that the European Union budget is used to fund defence research. If successful, it could lead to a specific budget line in the next multi-annual financial framework. So we need to get it right. As the agency's head, I'm proud that the agency's main achievements are so evident and good. It is working to support member states to plug critical capability gaps, such as air-to-air refueling, cyber defense, satellite communications, and cyber defense, to name only 4. It is helping to consolidate demand through cooperation so that future capabilities are more interoperable and cheaper to maintain and support. It is supporting defense industry, including small and medium enterprises, which are the source of so much technological innovation and also one of the backbones of our economic systems in Europe. Let me be clear. A strong and competitive European defense and technological industry base is a sine qua non for us. There can be no security without defense, and there cannot be defense without capabilities, and there cannot be capabilities without industry. The European Defence Action Plan will be an additional tool. Commissioner Bieńkowska addressed you earlier today, I know, at the opening, I think, of your works, on the Commission's idea. It should ensure that the European market, industrial and skills base will be able to deliver the military capability priorities required by member states. This is one of the topics I intend to discuss with the defense ministers tomorrow. Not the part, I think, when you will be there, but we will discuss maybe also this. I'll check it out, but normally we have the informal part of our councils together with the NATO Secretary General. This process is clearly linked to the global strategy. It is clear that the strategy will provide guidance for the identification of military capabilities needed and the means to deliver them with the support of the industry. So the translation of the strategy into capability needs will have to be coherent with the Commission's European Defence Action Plan and vice versa. Our European defence is already changing. The founding fathers of our Union believed defence should be the first step towards European integration. You all know things went quite differently. Still, 60 years after the failure of the European defence community, we are realizing today that the security of our Union calls for greater integration on the defence sector. We should not be afraid of looking in very concrete terms at some of the treaty provisions that do allow for taking defence cooperation within the European Union a step further, a significant one. The debate between Eurosceptics and Europhiles can only lead us so far. It's not an ideological debate. It shouldn't be. The national interest of all member states call for better security and defence. In a more connected world, with harder budget constraints, European cooperation can best serve national interests. That is what it's about. Our citizens understand this very well. For over a decade, 3 out of 4 Europeans have supported more integration on defence matters. It is time to listen to their voice and try to translate this into our future. I thank you very much.